What is the blue ocean strategy? Let's get into this. Well, it was a book put out a couple years ago, but consider this scenario. Here's one way to think about the blue ocean strategy. If Apple puts out its new iPhone, iPhone 3, and it's got certain resolution, 480 by 320, and they sell it at a certain price, well, then if Samsung puts out its phone 6 months later and says, we'll match your resolution, we'll make it lighter, and we'll sell it for a cheaper price, we'll sell it for $250. Well, 6 months after that, Apple puts out its phone, its iPhone 4, and says, okay, we're going to up the resolution, and we'll make it cheaper. Samsung says, all right, 6 months later, we're going to release our phone. We'll match your resolution, and we'll make it even cheaper. All right, Apple does the same thing, higher resolution, and cheaper if you buy it with a subscription. Samsung does the same thing, right? So looking at this progression, like what are they really doing? Al, what are these two companies in the process of doing?
Looks like they're chasing each other's tails.
They're chasing each other's tails, but they're also putting each other out of business, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the blue ocean strategy tells you to think about this as imagine two of those old wooden battleships side by side, and they're just firing broadsides into each other's hulls. And the water beneath them is just running red, and it's running red with their profit margins, right? These two companies are bleeding each other down. They're putting a lot more engineering effort, but they're getting less and less return of it, right? In the book, they call this the red ocean strategy, right? This is a way that most companies work. It's a highly competitive, tight market. You're fighting for your competitors for every little bit of margin. But if you think about this, where was the real money in the smartphone market made? Right? Where were all the college funds paid for? Where were all the stock options exploded? Where was the real money in this made? It was made in whatever we had before iPhones going to iPhone 1, right? And in that case, the specs didn't even matter. Right? We don't even remember what the resolution was. The iPhone 1 couldn't even copy and paste, and they could sell it for whatever price they wanted, right? Because there was no competition, right? They had broken into a whole new market, and there was no competition for it. That's what they're talking about when they say blue ocean strategy. One more example, and then we'll start in the engineering part of this. Here's another way to think about blue ocean strategy. Imagine if there's two theaters side by side, and they show the same movies. Obviously, their ticket prices are about the same, and these two theaters could start competing against each other and say, well, I'm going to have my tickets 50% cheaper than yours. Well, I'm going to make my drink $1 cheaper than yours. Well, I'm going to have 10 extra seats in my theater, right? And they could try and bleed each other down in a red ocean strategy. But this is a real story from the book. A theater in Europe asked parents, why don't you come to the theater more? Is the ticket prices too high? Are the movies not like the type of movies you want to see? And the parents responded, well, the biggest problem is we can't find a babysitter on short notice, right? If you have two kids, 4- and 8-year-old kids, you can't just pick up and go to the movies. Maybe the parents want to see, PG-13 or R movies, but you can't take the kids to those. You can't find a babysitter. You can't leave them at home. So what do? This movie theater in Europe said, fine. They got a fully licensed, fully staffed daycare center put on right next to the side of their theater. That way the parents come in at a moment's notice, drop the kids off in a nice, safe place, watch a movie, have a nice night out, pick them up, and know the kids are perfectly safe. So what does this do? What can this second theater now do? Now they can raise their ticket prices. Right now they can charge more for drinks. Right? They can do other stuff because again, they're competing against someone, or they're not competing against anyone now. Right? They're a ship sailing off in the blue ocean. They have no competition. All right. Does that make sense, Al?
They've asked a question and they've done some problem solving based on the answers.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So what we're going to do in this webinar is we're not going to tell you what to do. We're not going to tell you to put your metaphorical daycare center attached to your metaphorical theater, right? That's for you guys to figure out. You know your industry best. What we're going to talk about is once you decide the direction to go, which way you want to innovate, we're going to give you some tips, some of what our customers have done to help you make new products and innovate in that direction most profitably and most efficiently, right? How they've used the tools. So we're going to give you 5 best practices for blue ocean engineering. We'll return to this screen throughout the webinar, you'll see. And let's jump into it. Any questions so far, Al, or anything coming up?
No, not yet.
All right, great. I'm just going to check to make sure people can still hear me, make sure there's no internet problems. All right, let's get going.